British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defended his Brexit deal with the European Union after a warning from US President Donald Trump. And the US President says the deal would restrict Washington's future trade with Britain.
The exchange of words comes as the Prime Minister gears up for an election next month. And our correspondent in London, Ollie Barrett, joins us now for more. So, Ollie, tell us more about the statement out of Prime Minister Johnson's office.
Well, Downing Street insisting very strongly that the deal that Boris Johnson has agreed with the European Union would, in fact, allow Britain to go out into the world and sign trade deals with other countries, including the United States. Boris Johnson's spokesperson insisting that the deal is a good one and that it was signed and built together exactly for that reason, taking Britain out of the European Union's customs union so that it can go off into the world and strike trade deals with countries outside of the EU. So number 10 being very clear that Donald Trump hasn't quite got this one exactly right. Now, the idea of a trade deal is very controversial here in the UK, that potential trade deal between the US and the UK, partly because the opposition Labour Party are using a key line of attack during the election campaign that Britain's National Health Service would be on the table, up for sale, are the kind of words that we're hearing from Labour campaigners up and down the country. Interesting also, therefore, to hear Donald Trump, the US President, say that the NHS would not be on the table in any discussions about a trade deal between the UK and the United States. So some interesting words from Donald Trump on the idea of a US-UK trade pact in the future, and it's certainly going to be an issue that surfaces again and again during the election campaign.
Well, Ollie, with both Prime Minister Johnson and President Trump apparently at odds on trade, firstly, how has the reaction been in the UK to the US President even weighing in on it? And also, what could that point to in regards to sort of the relations between the two Atlantic partners?
Very controversial indeed here to see a US president intervene in this way in what is an ongoing and up-and-running election campaign. Donald Trump also criticising Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, saying that he would take Britain into a very bad place if he were to be the next Prime Minister. And Donald Trump also, despite that criticism perhaps about trade deals and the deal that Boris Johnson has struck with Brussels, he was pretty complimentary about Boris Johnson and about how he should remain as Prime Minister here in Britain past the general election. That controversial here too, and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, has said that that represents Donald Trump interfering in the UK election on behalf of his friend Boris Johnson. So again, that's going to be an ongoing theme throughout the election campaign. Also worth pointing out that Donald Trump visits London in December for a NATO summit just days before Britain votes. So we now have the very real prospect of major interventions in a British election campaign from Donald Trump, the US President, at the beginning of that election campaign and at the end of it.
Yes, certainly a lot to keep an eye on. Thanks very much for that. Ollie Barrett speaking to us from London.